While I generally understand and greatly appreciate the value of development and fundraising, the process can seem like a bit of a black box. Our development team goes out to talk to people, money magically appears, and we're able to carry out our mission and keep our staff paid. What are some important things that all nonprofit staff should know about the people and processes behind development and fundraising?
I think any development professionals listening to this are so giddy that this question was asked.
Just hugged their phone.
They did. They are so incredibly excited because they desperately want people to understand them and what they do. Yes. Because let's be honest, how many times do development and fundraising staff, they're like the people everyone's jealous of because they get to go out all the time and go schmooze. And they're like, they get to do all the fancy stuff, right? Or it's like, they're like, there's the perception they don't do any work. Well, no, let me tell you, that's not at all the case. But a few things I would take away, like that I would keep in mind when working with the development staff. Number one, it is a team sport. I would argue more so than any other department or functional area of an organization. And here's why I say this. Think about it. So you're a fundraising professional. If you're not in the loop about what's going on in the organization, what exactly do you have to talk about or share when you're out in the community? Or what if there's programs that aren't being measured, or you have no stories or impact to share about those programs, or the program just sucks and is totally ineffective, right? That impacts your ability to bring money in, because how are you going to sell people on, something that's just a broad mission statement? Finance, we know that if finance and the financial house isn't in order, no donor is going to give another repeat gift. So that makes it complicated, or if they feel like their money's not stewarded properly. And the list goes on. A board that refuses to fundraise and won't help open doors for you. I mean, the list goes on. So I truly wish every nonprofit, it was almost like the intro for a new employee, that they should be told that they are also playing a role in development, right? And in first impressions. I have heard donors talk about calling organizations before where you have a volunteer that maybe is having an off day, or you have a staff member who can't stand working at this organization and answers the phone that way, and the donor's completely turned off. Or the donor goes to the website to try to find a phone number or person to call, and they can't find that because the website's really poorly designed. So I just think of all of those tools that are needed to make someone successful in this position. And so being cognizant of that and how you can help be a part of the solution by doing, rock star work in your area, I think is one thing to keep in mind. You were in, finance, Andy. What do you think from this perspective? Like, were development people the ones that you were like, oh my God, they're a big pain in my butt, and all they want is like to spend money to hopefully make money? Like, I'm curious.
No, I haven't been in the finance role only that's just where I ended up. I did a lot of other things before that. So I think I came to it with more of an appreciation of what the development people do. A lot of the work that I do now with nonprofits, when I work with nonprofits, is helping sort of smooth the relationship between finance and development. And because the sort of default mode, and this is for lots of organizations, the default mode for the finance team is just to like pretend the development team is not there. Especially, so there's this interface between development and finance when it comes to donations coming in. Like, the donations have to be entered in the customer relationship management system. So like something like Razor's Edge or Donor Perfect or wherever that's going. Probably shouldn't say a bunch of product names because they're not.
They are not sponsors.
So they'll put the information in there, but then that information needs to be in the finance system as well. So if somebody's giving you $50, the development team wants to know that the $50 came in. The finance team needs to know the $50 came in as well. But the things that they need to track about that are very different. Like the sort of common challenge that you see over and over is something called a soft credit, which was a concept of like, if I give an organization $50, my wife is basically also giving $50 because we're a family. So it didn't necessarily, my name may have been on the check, but she may have been the person that actually said, can you write them a check for $50? In reality, our life works the opposite way around, right? I don't actually write the checks. So when the fundraising person talks to us, they need to know that both of us are responsible for that gift. Well, the finance team is like, well, it's only $50. Like, why are you crediting it to two different people? It's not $100. It's $50 split between two people. So is it $25 a person? Like, how are we? I don't understand because it's math.
Yeah.
and so you get into this sort of battle between what their requirements are and what finance's requirements are. And a lot of times finance just shuts them off and just goes, forget it. Just send me an export. We'll deal with it. I don't even want to look at your system. I don't care what it is. It's probably a mess. I don't want to look at it. Right. And it's absolutely the wrong attitude to have about it. You need to, those two organizations need to be, or those pieces of the business need to be directly connected and working together and like on, because that's where the money, like to your point, it's where the money comes from.
Oh, yes.
That's where this, like to the question's point, that's why we get paid, is because these people are good at their job. And so why we would not go out of our way to support them and make sure that they're happy and comfortable and have all the tools they need to be able to do their job. That should be like the first thing in the back of your mind is like, I'm going to be like, so one of my, I learned this the hard way very early on in my career is always be nice to the executive director's assistant.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you work
That's
someplace
a no-brainer.
right? I didn't know it at first. And I learned it the hard way. But if the executive director has an assistant, that person, it doesn't matter who they are, how they behave, what like crazy perks they give themselves by virtue of them being the executive assistant to the executive director or whatever. Like that person should be your best friend, full stop, right? You should treat your development team the same way you treat the ED's executive assistant.
I love that. I love that rule of thumb. And the other thing I was thinking here is it's the one position that's also, it's also the blend of art and science, right? Because there is some just intuitive and level of emotional intelligence and sound judgment that development people need to have and need to know really quickly, okay, this conversation just took a turn I didn't expect and I need to be able to go that direction, right? So you've got that, and then bordering on the same token of like, there is a science to this, right? There is a donor database, a CRM, and that needs to be entered properly because God help us if, we put someone's name in there that, actually died last year and their loved ones always getting reminded that this person died or whatever. Like, there's a process and how soon thank yous get turned around. And is it just this kind of unfriendly tax receipt letter and just kind of the planning, the process, the measurement of what fundraising success looks like is the science part of it. So I'm a big believer, like this is sort of that magical unicorn person who can balance both of those roles. Mm-hmm. And I think most people think of them more in just the art part of it. Oh, it's the art. And in some sad way, I think our society actually diminishes that and sometimes thinks, oh, those are soft skills. Like those aren't, the analytics or the data cruncher in finance or the program impact measurement. But you need both for that position to do really well. So thinking about whatever role you are in your organization, I think, and asking that person or just sort of helping them reach their goals, like you said, Andy, is going to be huge. And the other thing I just really, what sort of screamed out to me with this question is ask your development staff in your organization what you need to know about their job and what you can do to help support them. Like that was the intention of this question. And I'm glad that we're answering it, but I think any development person would welcome it. And I actually think development people, to your point, Andy, about sort of providing that bridge between both worlds of finance and development, I think development people also want to understand finance. I mean, I have worked with a lot of development professionals who just say, I just don't understand their way of thinking. And I don't know how to get them to agree to my, proposed idea or whatever. And it's like this anomaly between the two worlds, mm-hmm. and not to just focus on development and finance, but
that's where the most friction is. There's a lot of friction between those two pieces of the organization. I mean, I think, and here's like sort of a pro career tip too. So if you're in an organization and you want to be in leadership one day, if you're doing program stuff, if you're doing IT, if you're doing finance, if you're doing anything, and you think that maybe one day I think it would be fun to lead an organization, like the one thing that the board that hires EDs is going to want to know is, are you able to fundraise?
Absolutely.
Can you fundraise? And most most fundraisers, at least most good fundraisers that I've ever worked with, are delighted to tell you about what their process is and how they do their job. And, go to lunch with them and talk to them about like what it is that they're most worried about and how you can help them and learn about all of the things that they do. Because then you're going to learn the language, you're going to learn the vocabulary. If you do get put in a position in an organization, like a tiny organization where you have to do multiple jobs and one of them is fundraising, then you're going to actually know how to do that without having necessarily been specifically in a fundraising role before. And you're right. It's that really, like, the really good fundraisers are the ones that are good at balancing, my opinion, good at balancing the art and the science, the psychology of being able to deal with the donor and come to where the donor is and what the donor wants to give, at the same time knowing being able to read those signs of like, when do I back off? Like, what information does this person need? What information does this person not need? Who should I spend more time with that I haven't spent more time with? How am I going to get to my goals at the end of the year? Like, all of those things, it's just sort of this big equation that they're working on all the time. And the really good fundraisers, it's sort of intuitive. They just kind of know how to do it. But there's a process behind it. It's not just magic. I mean, I think the question said the money magically appears. There's very little magic about it. It's more of a process and an understanding of how to get that job done.
Anyone who has ever gone through a direct mail campaign will appreciate this. And I know enough to be dangerous with this. But when you get into the science of direct mail, everything from, what size font you use, what type of font you use, how long the page needs to be, what needs to be bolded, right? What is it indented or not? Is this 2 pages, one? I mean, the list goes on, and there is studies and research that shows certain things are more appealing to people. So really being sensitive to the fact that, your development team is juggling all of that and more, something that feels like it should take, 30 minutes, because that's the other thing that happens in organizations. It took you that long to craft, a direct marketing piece that's going to go out. Yeah, because there's a whole lot of moving. Do we have the right mailing list? Do we have the right, how are we segmenting messaging? The lists go on. So I love that question, and I love being sensitive to that perspective, in all perspectives in an organization.
Nonprofit governance.
Nonprofit answers.
Nonprofit board. Nonprofit management.
Nonprofit marketing. Nonprofit resources.
The Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits presents Nonprofit Everything, the podcast about everything nonprofit, with your host, Andy Shurick and Stacey Wedding.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Nonprofit Everything. I'm so happy, Stacey. Listen to this. Doesn't this sound great?
I know. We are giddy, with excitement here.
It's been so we've had so many episodes in a row that were terrible Zoom calls. It sounded like we were recording through a giant paper towel tube into an old transistor radio. But this actually sounds great because we're finally actually in a proper studio space. So we need to give a shout out to NV Energy. NV Energy has actually allowed us to use one of their studio spaces.
Yay.
Thank you, NV Energy.
Thank you, NV Energy. Round of applause.
Yeah, so that we can actually sound pretty good. So the Nonprofit Everything podcast, for those of you that may be new, it's a production of the Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits. It's the Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits is the state association for nonprofits in Nevada. They make this possible. And the way it works is you send us questions. You can email them to us. You can send them on Facebook. You can send them on Twitter. We've actually got a phone number now that Stacey set up for us.
Woohoo!
You can actually call us on the phone and leave a voicemail message. So we talk about this mysterious phone number, but then actually never tell anybody what it is. That's completely useless. So you can find it on the Nonprofit Everything webpage, or you can get a pen. It is 702-900-4656. That's 702-900-4656. So you can call us and you ask us questions, and Stacey and I do our best to answer them. And if we can't, we bring in a guest expert. And that's how it works. And with that, away we go. Stacey, what is the best practice for condolences for a donor who just lost his wife?
This is such an interesting question. So, okay, first I'll answer this question, but then I want to go into a larger sort of media piece that came out recently related to something about this. So, first thing first, I would say really depends on your relationship with the donor. And I do think size of the donor does make a difference here. I think at a minimum, if you are aware of, a donor who's lost his wife, I think a handwritten sympathy card is absolutely like the bare bones kind of basic gesture that should be done. Just from a donor, just the way you would want to treat other human beings, right? Mm-hmm. How you would treat anyone that lost a loved one. I think you need to really give thought, give some consideration to how close are you to the donor? Is it something that you want to show up at the funeral or service if it's public and open? I have really heard some yucky, nasty stuff around this where you'll hear people who maybe don't have a close relationship with the donor, but think, oh, there's going to be a lot of wealthy people in the room at the funeral. So it's a great place to go, almost like it feels predatory. And that sort of bothers me, to be honest.
Like looking for a date at a wedding?
Like philosophically, that just feels a little wrong, although I'm sure people would push back on that. But anyway, so thinking about that level of closeness to the donor and whether that was appropriate or not, you can always do, of course, a bouquet from your organization like you would do, or even better, I think if the donor mentioned another organization that was being supported or donations could be made in his wife's honor, I think that's, a great area. But this kind of goes back to just how deep is that relationship? Because I know I would feel weird as a donor if I only occasionally gave to an organization. I would not expect anything, to be honest with you. I mean, if I got a sympathy card or something, I would be touched and I wouldn't be offended. I wouldn't expect it. Now, if I was a larger donor, I would hope that either someone in my world had let them know, or I had a deep relationship, maybe I let them know. I would hope then they might go an extra step. It doesn't have to be costly. I think it's just showing the thought and acknowledging, we're so sorry. This is a really tough time. And truly just leaving it at that, not hands out or anything. Maybe if it's a larger donor, I saw one of the organizations I work with recently had found out they were getting these donations that they didn't expect online, and it was all saying in tribute of a certain person. And they ended up doing a little bit of research and found the connection to their mission with this person who had passed away, who they never knew when this person was alive. But they actually ended up getting in touch with one of the family members who donated, found out the story, and said, can we actually dedicate our next newsletter to this person that was important to you, and maybe even do a little article on them. And the family was so touched. So, I mean, from a stewardship standpoint, that's amazing. So there's so many creative ideas, but I do think it depends on, longevity of the donor and depth of that relationship.
Yeah. And don't stick a pledge card in the sympathy
Oh,
note.
gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you mentioned that there was a recent news article. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about the recent news article, because that puts an interesting spin on this.
Well,
so
I'm going to flip this because I want you to answer this
okay.
first. Because from what I understand, so there was a recent news article that basically was talking about the University of South Carolina. This is public, so I'm not saying anything out of school. Basically, their biggest benefactors, I think, mother passed away recently, and they had given to, it sounds like the daughter, the daughter who's still alive, basically ripped apart University of South Carolina for not actually addressing, acknowledging, doing anything in support of her mom, or, acknowledging the passing of her mom, and literally said she regrets basically all history of her giving to the organization, and really berated them in a huge way publicly in the media. So this wasn't just, my feelings are hurt. I mean, this person went deep, felt like a pretty intense issue. And obviously this donor had a lot of expectations about how soon. Donor's mom had passed about a week prior, and she didn't hear anything from this university, but had heard things from other institutes and colleges that they also were large benefactors to. So clearly she had an expectation of not only acknowledgement, but quick acknowledgement within basically 5 to 6 days of her mother's passing. So there was a lot of there's been a lot of scuttlebutt in the nonprofit sector about, was this appropriate expectations and behavior of the donor, or is this like going over the top? And I'm super curious, Andy, to hear your take on this.
It feels so. I think I have two feelings. One is that grief makes people strange. It can make people do strange things. It can make people behave in unexpected ways. So the first instinct is like, is this donor being unreasonable? Is this an unreasonable request for the donor to have expected this? And I think that's what you saw. I mean, what we've seen in some of the comments on this particular thing is like, how dare you? Like, like it's a very short period of time. Like, why are you so entitled? That's the feeling. So number one, grief can make you make very strange decisions. Number two is, if you're giving a lot of money to an organization, I feel like there should be someone who is dedicated to that person and keeping track. If somebody's giving you $150 million, which I think is,
yes,
I think it was in that range. If someone's given you $150 million, someone should be, that you have enough money to pay someone to keep track of things, to know what that donor's requirements are, to be able to respond to that donor's needs. And if that's the donor that you still want to have around, if you want to continue to maintain that relationship and it's worth it for the things that the donor is requesting, that then you would know, like this person or this team that's dedicated to this person would know that she's going to be mad if we don't get a sympathy card to her within 48 hours of her mother's passing. Like that's something that you should be aware of for a donor of that size. So putting aside like whether or not the donor's reaction to not receiving a sympathy card within 7 days was appropriate, it feels like the organization should have known that ahead of time. You know who you're dealing with. I mean, I know like even the organizations that I've worked with, you know things about the donors. You know their behaviors, you know the kinds of, but if you've done your job, you know the kinds of things that they're gonna want. And so you should be able to respond appropriately to them. Like, and it may not necessarily be what you would want as a person. So like for me, if some organization that I've given $25 to is, the ED's wearing a red pantsuit sitting in the front row of the service, to me, I would find that distasteful, right? But I'm not the donor in this case. I'm servicing the donor in this case, so I should be aware of what that donor's preferences are and not confusing. And that's one of the things that I think I was taught early on is that you're not the target market, right? Like you say this a lot of times. You look at a direct mail pace and you're like, what is this? This is so weird. I don't understand why this is like that. And you just have to remind yourself, you're not the target market. Like you're going to throw this away, but this isn't going to you. This is going to a completely different donor. And so it's designed to be able to, that donor is going to respond to that thing.
Do you think though, I get that grief makes people do maybe out of character things, but to make a really several derogatory public statements that are in the media that will impact this organization's future in a big way for anybody who reads it and hears about it.
Yeah.
That feels over the top to me.
I think there are in this case, there are other things going on.
There has to be.
You read the article, like I read one article and we'll link to it in the show notes. One of the articles read, this person was a trustee. They weren't happy with the selection of the new president. There were a lot of other things going on. And this is one of those things where when someone stops giving to you and they provide a reason, like sometimes the reason they give you isn't the reason that they want to stop giving to you. It is just the most recent reason that they can then use. Like, so, you get somebody who leaves we got these all the time. You get somebody who leaves you an angry voicemail about how dare you send me 2 pieces of direct mail 2 months in a row, right? Like, take me off your list. I'm never going to donate to you again, right? And it's not that the 2 pieces of direct mail, that was the straw that broke the case. It was that they maybe never wanted to donate to you in the first place. And now they've got something that they can feel like it's not them that's being a jerk for not donating. It's you for sending me 2 things in a row, right? So I think that's honestly, in this case, I think that's it. I think
probably
there's
is.
some other thing, and they just happened to be this is what made it blow up.
Well, but still shame on. So I'm still citing a
It's
little
bad donor
it is.
behavior.
Well, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad, and I think I'm tired of bad donor behavior that we allow and accept as a sector.
Yes.
Like it just. Anyways, that's a whole other episode and I could go on
It is.
my soapbox, right? But like it just bothers me. And so, and even anyways, oh well, I need to get off of that or else we'll be here all day. But I mean, the other thing is I thought, what if, I agree with you that if you've gotten a gift of that size, hopefully you are a large enough institution that you actually have the resources or staff that is assigned to keeping track of donors, looking at obituaries, doing whatever. But I guess I also want to play devil's advocate. What if they truly didn't know yet? Like, what if? I don't know. Like,
put a Google alert on the name of the donor.
Yeah.
Like if this is your person, you should be doing that anyway.
Yeah, you should. But would that come out? Like, would you know that within 5 to 6 days of a donor's death that they died?
All those other institutions did.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
All the
That's
other
a
people
good
that
point.
sent the
Yeah,
letters
that's a good
did.
point. Yeah.
I'm sure somebody feels really bad about this. There's,
Oh, God,
there's
no,
there's some
I feel
poor
really-
development person
Yes.
who was assigned to
Who's
this
probably
woman.
going to get fired from this.
I hope
right?
she doesn't get fired. I'm
Or
assuming it's a
he.
woman.
Yeah.
I assume this person doesn't get fired. I hope this person doesn't get fired. Because, sometimes, please don't get fired.
Yeah, please
If you
don't.
got fired, if this was your person and you got fired, call us.
Yeah.
We want to talk to you.
Yeah. Hey, I hope you're doing the victory dance because you made it through another episode of Nonprofit Everything, a production of the Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits. We so appreciate you and your questions, and we seem to be getting more questions, don't we, Andy?
We do. It's good.
Yeah, we're super excited about that. We get really jazzed when we see your questions, and make sure you keep sending them in. You can, find us on Facebook, social media, tag either one of us, however you talk to us or know us. You can also go and check out our new phone line where you can call in with your question, and we'll make sure to include that in the show notes in case you just need a reminder. It's also on the Nonprofit Everything website. What other housekeeping do I have? Oh, a huge thank you not only to you, our listeners, to Anne for making sure this is possible, but also to NV Energy. We are in studio, in person, and having a blast because we finally get to actually sound like normal human beings again. So thanks for joining.